Net neutrality is the principle that Internet service providers treat all data on the Internet the same and do not discriminate or charge differently by user, content, website, platform, application, type of attached equipment, or method of communication. For example, under this principle, Internet service providers are not able to intentionally block, slow down, or charge money for specific websites and online content. The first thing remotely like net neutrality was the Communications Act of 1934. This act replaced the Federal Radio Commission, the FRC, with the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, which is what still exists in our society today. This act states that it is prohibited for any person to maliciously interfere with any of the radio communication authorized by the United States government. The next step in the formation of net neutrality didn't come until 1996 in the form of the Telecommunications Act. This act was the first expansion on the Communications Act. It allowed anyone to enter the communications business in efforts to drive competition. It was the first time that the Internet was included in the broadcast and spectrum allotment, and therefore was now able to be regulated by the government. In 2003, law professor Tim Wu finally created the term net neutrality. He stated that it was the idea that Internet service providers should treat all data on the Internet equally. In 2007, Comcast found themselves in the middle of a major lawsuit against a singer who saw that his songs would not transfer onto certain websites using their Internet service due to Comcast's direct blocking of his file transfers. This, along with several other lawsuits, inspired the FCC to pass the Open Internet Order in 2010, which called for all Internet service providers to treat Internet traffic equally. It requires ISPs to be, quote, transparent about how they handle network congestion, prohibit blocking of traffic on wired networks, and outlaw unreasonable discrimination on those networks. In 2012, many different public interest groups threatened to file a formal complaint to the FCC about the violation of the Open Internet Order when AT&T blocked FaceTime for customers unless they subscribed to a mobile share plan. In the end, though, AT&T agreed to unblock FaceTime.
The federal court judge openly sides with Verizon. He claims that the Internet is not classified as a telecommunications system and therefore cannot be regulated as one by the FCC. He also said that they could easily get that authority to be regulated by reclassifying the Internet as a telecommunications service. In March 2014, Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, calls out Internet service providers claiming that there should be stronger net neutrality laws that prevent big companies, like Comcast and Verizon, from charging services like Netflix and YouTube a connectivity fee. He wanted satisfactory access to networks with no extra charge. In June 2014, on his show Last Week Tonight, comedian John Oliver asks his viewers to write to the FCC supporting net neutrality. By August of the same year, nearly 4 million people had written to the FCC about wanting net neutrality. On September 10, 2014, many websites participated in an Internet Slowdown Day. This day was a series of coordinated protests to show consumers what the Internet would be like without net neutrality and to promote the cause. In November 2014, President Obama calls for a reclassification of the Internet as a utility and proposes that ISPs have a legal obligation not to block or limit a user's access to a website.
Hi everybody. Ever since the Internet was created, it's been organized around basic principles of openness, fairness, and freedom. There are no gatekeepers deciding which sites you get to access. There are no toll roads on the information superhighway. This set of principles, the idea of net neutrality, has unleashed the power of the Internet and given innovators the chance to thrive. Abandoning these principles would threaten to end the Internet as we know it. That's why I'm laying out a plan to keep the Internet free and open. And that's why I'm urging the Federal Communications Commission to do everything they can to protect net neutrality for everyone. They should make it clear that whether you use a computer, phone, or tablet, Internet providers have a legal obligation not to block or limit your access to a website. Cable companies can't decide which online stores you can shop at or which streaming services you can use, and they can't let any company pay for priority over its competitors. To put these protections in place, I'm asking the FCC to reclassify Internet service under Title II of a law known as the Telecommunications Act. In plain English, I'm asking them to recognize that for most Americans, the Internet has become an essential part of everyday communication and everyday life. The FCC is an independent agency, and ultimately this decision is theirs alone. But the public has already commented nearly 4 million times, asking the FCC to make sure that consumers, not the cable company, gets to decide which sites they use. Americans are making their voices heard and standing up for the principles that make the Internet a powerful force for change. As long as I'm president, that's what I'll be fighting for too.
In February 2015, a 5-member FCC committee voted in favor of President Obama's reclassification of the regulations on ISPs. The vote was split along political party lines, with Republicans voting against these regulations. In June 2016, the Federal Appeals Court sides with Internet users, in which it is now the law that companies that provide broadband services are common carriers and therefore must follow the laws under the Communications Act. This decision settled a very long disagreement of the role of the FCC in consumer production and industry. On December 14, 2017, the FCC voted 3-2 to repeal net neutrality laws. This decision is very controversial. Many big companies like Google, Facebook, and Twitter have spoken out publicly against this decision. The FCC now no longer has the authority to regulate broadband services. This power now shifts to the Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC. Under the 2015 net neutrality rules, the FCC reclassified broadband as a utility, which gave it the authority to regulate these companies. This no longer stands. The FTC will still regulate broadband internet services, but not as closely as the FCC did. The FTC is more focused on telecommunications and less on internet. On May 9, 2018, the Senate decides to save the FCC's net neutrality rules by a 52-47 vote. They have the power to do this by using the Congressional Review Act, or the CRA, that allows Congress to reverse recent decisions made by government agencies. Going forward, in order for net neutrality to actually be saved, the House now must use the CRA to overturn this policy as well. In this case, they would need the support of every single Democrat representative as well as 22 Republicans. If in fact they did gain the necessary support, the reverse of the policy would then have to be signed by President Trump.